Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Thanks for waiting. Sorry for the short delay. We were taking care of some technical issues, but we appreciate your presence. And welcome to another Agile IT webinar. For questions, feel free to send them in the box. And I think we're all set. Hey, Conrad, I'm passing over the mic to you.
All right. Well, an exciting day. There's a lot we're going to go through. Just a few things for those that have jumped on. One, we're going to give a primer on some of the key Power Platform things. But two, this is a very demo heavy session that we're going to go through, and I'll explain some of that when we get to that point. And three, for those that are attending the webinar today live, there's a special little thing that we're going to do for you all, and I'll explain what that is and why you want to be here at the end, because it's something that's new we're going to try out with all of you, and I think you're really going to like it. It's nothing else you have to do except say, yes, I want some of that right now, and I'll explain that here in a moment. So, for today's, one of the reasons why we wanted to have today's session and talk with all of you, and as we talk with our customers, and maybe you're a customer in the past or current, or maybe thinking about it, there's a lot that people have been in SharePoint Online, whether you're there or not. I'm just, for today's session, we're just going to assume that you're there. And many times, in there it is, hey, we're there, but we really need to do the next kind of set of things. We really want to see how we can do these areas differently. So really today we wanted to go through and just demystify some things, kind of expose, oh, hey, I didn't know that button was there, to kind of get you there. We're going to cover a lot of these topics, in terms of a summary. These are kind of things we want you to walk away with, if you will. For the most part, most people, as I think you're here, or it's like we see a lot of our customers, they've been using SharePoint Online like a file system. We put files in there, we organize them with a bunch of folders. Oh, we need a new thing we're going to work on, spreadsheet away, Word document. Maybe you've done some cool things inside of SharePoint to customize web parts and those areas. We're not really going to talk about the kind of basic, or I wouldn't say basic, but the included parts of SharePoint that most people know about. If you don't, I'm sorry, I'm not going to cover that. Like, how do you do this with a web part and reorganize it and get metadata? There's a lot of great stuff, but we're going to focus on kind of leaping beyond that, if you will. There's always questions around licensing, how that works, and we'll talk a bit about that towards the end. And maybe you're going through some modernization or replacement yourselves, where maybe you had another application, a third-party thing somewhere else, and now you think, well, it's maybe I could do single sign-on with it, but we have to put data there and then bring data from something else, and maybe you use a third party like Zapier, and maybe you use this and this. But how do I bring that together to make it a more cohesive part of what we do in our environment? And how can we start thinking about that as moving on? But sometimes we feel that, if we were to do Power Platform, because it is its own kind of product or service, that we kind of tend to think of it as its own thing. And it can be its own thing, but it doesn't have to be that way for everything. So Power Platform really is a collection of different products or services. They're licensed together with your Microsoft 365 type of licensing, which I'll show in a little bit. Towards the end, we'll talk really about the licensing part of this. And one thing is, how do we really get embedded with it? So here's the cool thing that I'm going to tell for those that are attending. When we get to this specific part at the end, it won't be in the recording online. It's not going to be something we're going to give out. So when I get to the demo and the environment that I'm going to be demoing, for all of you at the end, once we're doing with all of our question and answers, I'm going to provide you access to the same exact demo environment with a bunch of different accounts, a bunch of seated information. Everything I demo, you're going to see, you're going to have access to, including the admin username and password to get into the same tenant, so that you guys can continue to explore and experiment. So that's the thing that you're going to get towards the end. You're going to have it here. So watch as we're going, and when you see I do things, you can go right back in and see it for yourself. It'll be only available for about a week and a half, but towards the end of the month. But that's what you're going to get. And if you're watching this recording, That's maybe why you want to be in some of these webinars in the future, and we'll probably do some other cool things like that and more. All right, so when we look at the Power Platform, there's all these capabilities. So first off, let's just take a look at Power Apps. So Power Apps itself, really it's geared towards the laptop user, the tablet user, the desktop user, and the mobile user. So this is the place where you can create applications, if you will, and still using your data. So this is a good view of it yeah, I can build this little Power App that I can push into a Teams location or make it directly available. And by the way, when you do check this out and do it, create a mobile view, install the Power App that's funny, Power App on your mobile device, and and then when you log in with the credentials, you'll see the app if you have your credentials for it, and then you can use it on your phone. So now instead of right now, when you think about, well, a lot of times we're interacting together as a team, there's a spreadsheet and people can kind of get to it. Yes, you can get to the spreadsheet online, but it doesn't have that same feel, nor can you have the right logic or structure or what you'd want to do. So Power Apps is a nice way to quickly create that. And we're actually going to, walk through creating one of these and extending something in SharePoint. So again, this little bit, visual here talks about the app by itself. Now, the app by itself, it really wants to be a visualizer with Power Apps, create the rules, how it's laid out. But when it's time to actually do something, the engine for that is Power Automate. So Power Automate really is the place where, here in this example, in this little short video, you'll see they're going to create a little Power App, like maybe somebody from themselves. And I'm building this out for me. And every time I get an email and there's attachments, oh man, I have to go into it, get the attachments. Instead, this individual is going to create a little flow that says, hey, every time I get an email, for every attachment that's in there, I want you to save it into OneDrive. Now, that's just one thing that one person could do. Hey, could you do that for all people on specific emails? Much different, type of topic that we have there. Let's give 1 second. Yeah, so that's just something different that we can do there. When we think of oh, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button before he was done. My apologies. So how you can do this as a service account, much different topic, and we have some blogs that we've already have, and we're going to be posting some as well. But anyway, the Power App itself could say, hey, I want to show this list of all these items that's coming from a SharePoint list, and I want to visualize it this way. But maybe I want to have a button on there that says it's ready for approval or sent to the next person. That action would actually be sent into Power Automate that captures it, that you've defined, to then do whatever that means, either update a SharePoint list and or send somebody a Teams message, and or actually send a maybe to a supplier, they have a REST-based interface, web-based interface, send something to them. You can do all of that, and it's well defined in here. And we'll show some of these pieces as well as we go through. So Power Automate really is the engine to both work with Power Apps, work with some of the other systems, work completely behind the scenes. So the first thing up top that you saw there, it's what's called a trigger, which could be, the first trigger they have was when an email comes in. It could also be run it every day, every 3 hours. It could be when somebody hits this particular button in Power App to do something. And again, the nice thing there is I can have this logic that's in Power Automate where I can have the right permissions, I can have the right flow of interaction separated from the application, because as you'll see, there's other places where I might be able to use that. So virtual agents, I mean, everybody's seeing this. You went to our website, you probably saw something like this where it's a bot, where you ask it questions. In this particular case, you can see they already have a Power Virtual Agent, and they're just adjusting it that says, hey, when somebody asks a question and instead of just providing the response, we want to provide a pointer to where the images are. So they explain where the images are. It's for this JSON. So this JSON is a key thing we'll talk about later on. So we can include it in. And these are chatbots that you can put on your website, public, on your website, private website, could be internal, that people can use and ask questions. So all part of Power, the whole Power Platform family. Now, this is the one that's extremely interesting because many times, we've done this ourselves and we still do it in some places where, we create a team site, which creates a little SharePoint site behind the scenes. We'll see that. And that's a place where we do it. And it's kind of limiting in terms of the UI, the functionality. And so Power Pages, which is part of Power Platform, allows you to essentially create a website. You can define it, if I want a private audience, they have to be authenticated into Azure AD or as a guest. I can make it anonymous. Is this where I'm going to put my company public website? I mean, you could. Most of the time, you'll do something like a mixed audience. Here's a landing thing, click on these things. And anytime people are registering, filling out data, because remember those same forms and collections of views we were seeing in Power Apps, you do the exact same thing inside of Power Pages, and it's working with your data in the background. And oh, should we show this? Should we not? Again, there's roles and authentication rules and audiences that you can do in here. So this just gives you the kind of open door of what could we do, how we deploy it. And the nice thing about doing something like this with Power Pages is I don't really have to think about where do I get this deployed? Do I spin up an Azure app service, virtual machines, and I can do distributions, and what's my load balancing rules and all? You don't have to do this here. So you can start to think about where you could use something like this. Does this replace what your internal SharePoint website is? Probably not. Could it be another avenue that some of your contractors or your partners or maybe some of your customers could use to interact with you without a whole big old thing, or making it where it's Power Pages, where it's kind of the kind of app perspective versus what people like, which is a nice kind of clean browser-based website and a link. Can you control it? Do a custom domain? Yes, you can. And there's even more things beyond this. So that's the kind of quick lap around, some of the Power Platform. Oh, I'm sorry, how did I forget, one of my favorite ones, which is Power BI. So Power BI, there's to use it by itself, there is a free desktop. You can go to the Microsoft Store and add it in and start using it. I actually preferred kind of doing it that way myself. And so here you can see on the top where it says the Power BI desktop, you can use the browser one. But here's where you get to start pointing to different types of data. And you can say, oh, this is great, and it's free. Anybody can use it. You don't have to even have Microsoft 365. But you can start to use it, point to all kinds of data. But when you are using it, you'll see that little button on the top right-hand corner that says Publish. You can actually take this, if this data was coming from a SharePoint list, maybe some of that data was being pulled together for you from Power Automate, lots of different ways to get that data set collection, and organize it the way you want. It will honor any kind of data protection rules you have, like row level data. You can control that through Power BI. Anyway, think about now that the data that I've collected all this time in Excel, that people have it, you can now bring together with Power BI. You can set up regular schedules of how it fetches the data, updates the data. Once it's up there, you can actually register and say, hey, I want this report emailed to me, or at least a link to it, and maybe even attach it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, because it's important to me or to the team that needs to consume it, even though we can go to it when we want. So some of the things that you can do with Power BI, which is really, really nice. All right, so let's hop into some demo land, shall we? So again, everything that you're going to see here, we're going to provide the links to it. I'm just going to kind of give you a walkthrough. This is part of a canned demo that Microsoft provides to us as partners, and then we are able to provide it back to customers in specific engagements. For this specific engagement is this webinar. So you're going to have access to all of this. Right now I'm logged in. You see up here where it says SA, because I'm the system administrator. That's just what I'm going to use right now. But there's the kind of traditional intranet homepage. All of these views that you're seeing on here are actually part of something that Microsoft has, with the layout. So you can actually go in there, get some of the, it's called a lookbook. I think if you go like lookbook.sharepoint.com, and you can implement it yourself. Oh, I've got a lot of great menus and things, but many of the times the links don't go anywhere. They're just trying to create a template, and then you can customize it. So here's some nice little customizations for the homepage, some videos about the company, what we have going on. Hopefully you're at least at this space or getting towards this space, but we're going to kind of jump beyond that. So there's another site here called FlySafe, FlySafe conference. They have a thing, and I just created an event itinerary. Nothing really special. All I did was, oopsie, so what I want. Nothing really special for this one. All I really did to get it going was, hey, I want to create a new list. And I picked, I believe I picked event itinerary or one of the other ones, which is nice because you can select it and select the profile you want. You can't create your own templates, so that's nice, but these are pretty good. And it's nice because here in the SharePoint list, you can see it's doing some conditional conditional formatting. If it's meal, make it red, make it green. So you get to define those things, but that's not the part we're really going to focus on. The part we're going to focus on is here. I already did this event itinerary. And one thing that you'll notice in here is that, when I want to go ahead and say, let's go ahead and create a new event itinerary item. Now, this layout that you see here, you can go into the SharePoint list and say, I want to reorder it, or maybe provide some new descriptions, which is okay. The problem is that maybe there's other things I want to visualize it. Maybe I don't really want them to fill out certain things. Maybe I want to create other rules. So this is our first step into that. If we go over here to the drop down, one of the things I can do is customize with Power Apps. So yes, you can edit the columns, that'll change the order. You can configure some of the layout that you want, but that doesn't sound cool enough for us. So we'll go ahead and do customize with Power Apps. What this is going to do is move you over here in the URL. You can see it goes to make.powerapps.com. So if you just went to make.powerapps.com, logged in, even with your own credentials in your own tenant, or here in this, little fun little demo tenant, you'll go to the place where it says, do you want to create an app? Do you want to create this? And there's a way to navigate to this window. But as you saw here, pretty easy to go define and see what we want. Now, when it first goes in here, some things you'll notice that it just put a few details in here. I can add additional fields if I want. So all of the other fields that were there in the other location, I could decide to add into this one as well. Like capacity and let's say description. So I'll add those in as fields, and we can see that now it got added in there. Maybe I want to organize it. I'm already messing things up. Control Z is what I use there to move it around. But here I want to get the whole card. You can get the whole card and got to navigate to get those arrows. Almost landed on it. There we go. And I can decide to move them around a little bit. If I want to move it, I can even create extra space. So let's actually create a little extra space in here. And inside of this, you'll see that there's these other items that's in there. And I can decide to add more. Maybe there's a little text explanation down here that that I want to add in. So let's say we can just add another little text label. Unlock and add. Yeah, I want to do that. It's saying it wants to lock it because it wants to kind of keep me safe, and I'm not on the safe side at the moment. So make sure to check with Megan. And maybe I want to, I can make this a URL link that goes to the web page that says, here's the different capacity numbers to go use. So already in here, not just like a little friendly description or whatever, but I can also put rules on this that says, well, if this selection is this, I can do something else. So already in this little landscape, I'm already making some changes or making some customizations of what I want. And you can even decide that, the whole landscape is something that you might, this I already have it locked in the whole screen size, so I'd have to do something different. But, you can change the length of this, and I'm not gonna be able to do it this side of it because I've already predetermined it. But you can change, the sizes. So there's a lot of those customizations that you can do here on this side, so that, when it does do the other thing, let's not mess me up. Let's Control Z my way back a little bit. All right. Let's see if I get those guys back in their box. There we go. Customize it whatever way you will. There we go. It fixed up some of it. So customize it, put a new header, put a logo in the back. Here's a link to go to this. We use this a lot ourselves and internally at Agile IT. So, all right, it's not the greatest. I'm going to save it. Now, just because I saved it doesn't mean that, it's actually published. He says, do you want to make it published to users? We'll do that in a second. The other thing is you can hit play. And when you hit play, right now there's no items in here because I didn't actually create any items yet. Copilot stuff will be another session, we do another. But if I did have one, it would show it. And you can even test against different phone sizes, different iPad sizes, or how's it look in the browser. Another little kind of control, yeah, it's going to tell you here. You can also hold down the right control, is it left control? Left control, then it'll kind of go into the same play settings that you don't have to play. But anyway, so I've done that. Let's go ahead and publish this thing. So now I'm going to save it. It doesn't look great. Wasn't even really trying to make it look good, but you can customize it, do whatever you want. And again, now when you think about people filling out the SharePoint form, because sometimes you'll have maybe 15, 20 things you're trying to collect, but in that little sidebar, it's really hard to navigate it. And sometimes of those 15 things you're trying to collect, you're not actually trying to show everything. Like when they create the new one, maybe there's only 3 questions, and the other ones, I think I would have saved and published it, didn't I? I'll do it one more time. all the setting, you might have like 15 things in there, but really there's only 3 things you want to collect from the very beginning. And then later on, depending on approval rules, other data collections, it gets added. So this is where you can start to do those sorts of things. So you can actually create here just as, form screen 1 over here is where you start to really tell it, where does it go? So here right now it's saying all of them. So you normally go in here and create new screens that's specific to the action you're trying to do, because when you're viewing it, you may want to view certain things. When people actually click on that link in SharePoint, instead of it being off to the side, you can, again, lay it out the way you want, show the things that you want when they're in edit mode, because that's where you're going to do like maybe certain approvals or whoever's logged in, what approvals they see. So you get a lot of control of what you can go do. This is the place where it feels like, oh my God, there could be a lot of work to this. Yes, there's going to be some logic and work that you could do, but the control that you have, because again, one of the complaints I hear about SharePoint list is, well, it's just so limiting what you can do in there. But it's ironic because then they just put it into a spreadsheet. Anyway, so let's go ahead and go back to SharePoint. Yes, we want to leave. So it'll close it all down. Go to the site. Sometimes it takes a few seconds for it to do its thing. I don't think it'll take a little bit. We'll go back to it so you can actually see the updated form. Oh, there, it's thinking, fetching, getting. So there it is. So all the same things that we had there before. Remember, we didn't repopulate everything. We just put a few things. Make sure to call Megan. Again, real ugly. By the way, I do like this. I had feedback, positive feedback in the past, because sometimes it can be such a perfectly big demo with everything just working, and you don't know what it looks like when you first start off. So this is kind of the quick start off. There could be, you have other feedback or questions, say, hey, it'd be great if you guys go deeper sessions on this. We can certainly take a look at that. Anyhow, so right there, we've already, started to use Power Apps inside of our SharePoint site. So now if we create anything new in here, let's say pre-meeting dinner, session code 123, session type, it's going to be a meal. Capacity, we have 20 people in capacity, and this is like, welcome dinner. Good. So now we have one in there. Same thing, right? And again, we could have controlled what we have in there, and maybe this is exactly what I want. Somebody put something in. The other parts we're gonna get out, and maybe I might want to customize it. So already, you can do this too. Existing SharePoint sites, but you can see that, hey, once you wired it up with Power Automate, you really want to think about, well, what do we want to show? What is going to be on there? We do need to create different screens for edits. Right now, it'll just use the one. So now I can't, really edit the other ones because we're using the same one to view it, edit, and delete it. So it's one thing to kind of think. So this is one of those things where it's like, start off with something new, start off in the demo environment and try it out. So far in the SharePoint, created a Power App, customizing a SharePoint list, able to view it now with other people so we can do whatever interesting things that we want to go do with it. So let's say now that, let's create like a little automation. Oh, let me actually go back in here, sorry. So there's a few things. One, if it's always easy to overlook, you can set certain rules inside of in SharePoint, and they're kind of simplistic rules, but they kind of work out, and just say, hey, when a new item is, let's say a data column changes. So let's say when the start date changes. No, let's do this. Let's say when the let's go on. No, we don't want changes. That's just too weird. All right. So whenever a new item is created, I can decide I want to go ahead and email the speakers, because that's a list. So if a new item is created and there'd be something in the speaker list, there's nobody in the speaker list, it's not going to email anybody. But let's say that was one of the default things that we put in there, it would send them out. You can also create other rules that says, when a due date is changed, that I want something to happen. So let's go ahead and set a reminder that on the start and end date. So it's coming up here. You can set some rules on that. So is that Power Automate? Well, as you can see here, it is going to build you a little something, because these are what they call the connectors. So all of the different connectors, and you'll see that a little bit more here in Power Automate, they have to align to somebody's permission, because they also have licensing that's going to go with it. So here I'd have to sign in, I'd have to create notification. I'm not going to go through all this now because I'm going to do it through Power Automate. And then you select continue, and then you set the number of days in advance before the start date. So maybe you want the speakers to have something done or confirmed. So this is the beginning place where you get to automate certain areas, manage the rules. But let's do a little bit more integration than this. So we're going to go ahead and from here integrate. We're going to go ahead and we're going to create a flow. You could go to make.power.com. So in this one, we're going to send, let's say, let's look a little more. These are all the defaults. We could decide to just build some, build some on our own, but we'll use one of these. So let's see, when a request approval, team SharePoint. Okay, we'll use this one. So now this is going to pull forward the templates. Now we're in Power Automate. This will tell you what's going to happen. Again, remember those little connector flows. So here it's going to have my little green checkbox. This one I need to go ahead and sign in. So let's go ahead and do that. Because I'm already signed in, it's not asking for anything else. And for approvals, we're going to go ahead and create that as well. So now approvers is set up. So now all of these, when you look into it, it'll show you when you click on it, you could be logged in with different credentials. If other people, you share this and they have assigned their credentials on the other side, you can decide to use that as well. So it's one thing to keep note of whenever Power Automate is there and it's shared, it runs under the context of the user that it's been assigned to. So if another user, let's say, did something that required to do a flow, and these are the flows, to do the flow, when that flow runs, it's going to run under the context of the connected user, not the person who initiated it. Maybe it'll make more sense here in a little bit. So we'll go ahead and say continue. So it's going to take from that template, and put them in here. Very basic one. So this one is saying that, hey, when an item is created, so again, this is what's called the trigger. It's always at the top. And this is whenever an item is created in that conference in the list called event itinerary, then that's how I start the flow. All right. Then the next one that you normally have here is, well, all right, well, when that happens, well, I need to go get the item that happened. And so this item that you see that's labeled in here comes from, this is important, it's not a whole class on flow, but it helps, is whenever you have the kind of trigger or whatever other kind of components that you drop in here, these names are friendly. You can rename them, but they're also helpful because it explains that, hey, this ID comes from when an item is created. Because as I go lower, here you're going to see that get my profile, which is here. If I go lower, you'll see the one above it, get item, is here because get item has ID. And when an item's created, which is above up here, it also has ID. So this is the way that you can know which one that you're dealing with. All right. So in this particular example, it's saying, all right, well, now that we were kicked off, we have our item. We get my profile. That's the user who submitted the request, and now we're going to set something for approval, and we're going to say like, please approve my, event item. Not the greatest. And in here, just for now, you get to decide like who's going to go get this. And let me grab, I got a little cheat sheet over here for me, which is this guy here. Now, as you'll notice, all the accounts and items that we're going to be showing, they're non-routable email. They're only going to be good internally. Now you can decide it to a group. Well, what if it's a dynamic list that comes from something else? Yes, you can do that, but it's just not a part of this particular demo. So now it's going to get approval, and we can even say, well, let's get a link to the item. Let's stick that in here too, which would be in the get item, and we should have a link to it. If I think about it, where are you? Link to item. So there it is. I'm just gonna write this is the event item. Not being very creative. Now we go into approval. So for each approver, this one says post your own adaptive card. So it's going to send it to the approvers with their information. It's going to wait for approval, and then it's going to look for the outcome. And if it's approved, so if it's equal to approved, yes, it's going to send another message. Now here's where, when it gets approved, I could, say, oh, I want to get that item. Update that item with, not put a column in there yet, but I could create a column in there in the SharePoint list called approved, approved state, and then change it to true. When somebody first created the item, part of that flow that would have been in there in the Power App is I would have defaulted to false. So this is where in Power Automate, I can have that whole kind of thing sorted out. So great, we have this very basic thing that's in here. You know, started off by, oh, what did it say? Great program, not running. Oh, okay, shoot, I didn't install that part. I didn't install the approver list. Oh, that's going to be a bummer, because that's what happens when you just do a demo live and didn't fully walk through it. Let's see if I can do this real quick while you guys are on. Why not? Approvers received. Oh, I have to actually do it in the configuration, the admin center. If I don't get through this right away, I may have to wait and follow up with that one afterwards. All right, because sorry, the environments. We're using this one, I believe. And by the way, you can have different environments because you can have people develop different apps or different services, your test applications. The administrator can define who gets those environment, what's controlled, their data with it, and knowing, well, what is their environment that they're working. If we go back over here, you'll see that this one's using the Contoso default. That's what it was. I updated the other one. So we're going to Contoso default. And in here, I did not have the whole data store set up and configured. Oh, that's my bad. Let's see if I can do it real quick. No, I'm not gonna be able to. Just have to configure a few more things. All right, we'll skip for that and get back to it. Sorry about it. But anyway, so this is where you configure the flow to go do that. I may just create another thing real quick so you can kind of see it working. Okay. So again, Power Automates, you know, where you'd have that. This is the trigger that would have that info that says, hey, when an item is created, what to go do in approval flow. I apologize. Maybe at the end I'll be able to have enough time to put to turn on the approval one of them. Okay, so let's jump to another one. So you know, when we were talking inside of this list here inside of SharePoint, remember we can do our integration with you know, we've already started to customize our form, creating some flows. We didn't get all the way through it, but we can also visualize this list. Now I'm not going to jump into that at this moment, but one is, you know, when we're talking about SharePoint, it's amazing how many times people they just kind of ignore this little cool button that's there to just start to customize it or to create some automated flow. So just one way that you can start thinking about, we changed our form here. Now I can actually have rules based off of this for an approver, or to, you know, maybe capacity is over 50 in size, that, you know, there's something else that I want to go do and email somebody and say, hey, somebody put in with capacity, you know, greater than 20. But let's do something. Maybe that's one I'll kind of jump back into. Okay, so but let me jump into something else here that's really related to this. So which is, it's something that's you know, it's in here. We'll provide this URL to those at the end along with the credentials for all this. It's something called Microsoft Syntax. So Microsoft Syntax, you know, this is the place where, you know, there's different places where you can use this. There's because there's also the AI builder that's inside of Azure. But we're going to talk about this one in terms of some of the structured documents. So what is this? I'm actually going to look at the one here in Operational Content Center. So you have these, whenever you have the license and you first turn it on, you actually have to go into the the administrator portal, see that it's there, say I want to turn something on, you create a content center, that's your beginning. That's nice that this is already kind of sorted out. So when I go through this, you know, I'm just going to rip through kind of quick so you can kind of see it. You create these models, and essentially what a model is you're trying to define. So here I have this model here called RFP classifier. So what the model is your way of teaching the syntax engine that there's certain document types. So you can see here, these are example files for training. Now, the reason you have these different files is that you need to train the engine that says, what is a good RFP document and what's not a good RFP document? And that's essentially what the classify, you know, the files are. And then once you say, all right, now that I can determine the classifier, so here you basically say, all right, I loaded a bunch of sample images. Sorry, it keeps refreshing. And you're just trying to say, how do I determine that this is an RFP? So in this case, you know, it's already been labeled as no. So we pulled, you know, when you upload it, you'll see all the content in here and say, this is a good example of a no. This is not one of those. How about this contract? Also no. What about this thing? And it doesn't have to be out the file name. It's just like that for convenience. Yes, this is a good document, and you can even tell it why it's a good document, but we'll see a little bit more about that in the end. So file names are different. RFPs in the beginning, at the end, you say yes, these are good documents. So now we say, all right, these are good documents, and then you start to explain how it became a good document. So here for company, it's going to say, well, I'm going to look for, particular company in here, reference. Let's see if I can find the right thing here. You just say like, yes, it's a good document, or there's a key phrase that's in there, because we see a phrase called RFP response anywhere in the document. You can also look for specific parts, the top, the bottom. So if it meets these conditions, then then it's an RP, and then you can actually test them out, as well. You can add more documents. Anyway, first bit is train it. This isn't a good RP document, this in it. And then this is where the real magic happens. So here you have these extractors, because I want to pull out the bid, the company, and the overview. And so, now I can start to train it of what to extract. So here, there's already ones there. You again train it. Hey, if we did get one of these documents, there's no label. This one has a label because you teach it here. So in this example, we're saying, hey, we found this thing here, and then you train it, right? So for this one bid extractor, I said, that's the thing I'm looking for. And then this is where you train it. Hey, we're looking for a label that has this value before and this value, afterwards. Normally in our bids, we have introduction right afterwards. Sometimes it's these things. So if we see anything like that, most likely it's there. The reason you see this blue and green is because blue is where I came in here and I created, I'm sorry, I selected it. I'm not doing it right now, but you select it, and then it's like, okay, that's good. And then, for this document, I've said that's the thing I'm looking for. When you go into train, if the blue and green line up, perfect. It means the predicted value of what I was looking for here is the same as what I labeled it. And, home run, I got it there, and here's another map. So this is the way we're saying, okay, now I told it what's a good document. Now I'm teaching it the information inside the document that I want out. Once you attach this to a SharePoint library, right? So there's a SharePoint library that has all your real RFPs. It's just where I train it. Now when you attach this model to that library, any documents that go into that library, it's going to go through the same process. It's going to say, hey, which one of these are RFPs? Hey, okay, I found them. Let me get those values out. What it ends up doing for this, so if we look into a SharePoint site and look at the files, so let's take a look at, let's go in here and let's go into Sales West. If we look in the files, sorry about that. But anyway, what it ends up happening is that in your files, when you attach it to that document library, is those extracted items that we trained it, those three, it would add those columns right into that SharePoint list, the same names as it. So it would render from this, it would read it, when it found those documents, again, it would automatically create those three columns as soon as we attach it to the library, and anything it extracted out would now be inside of those columns, right? So this is where that syntax is automatically assessing, extracting information, and applies the same data in the column where they found that file. Now think about that. Now that these files aren't just files like we're talking about, where they're just a bunch of files and folders, somebody's got to go into it. Oh, maybe create another spreadsheet. Now I'm extracting the data. Can I create in the same library different models to extract different types of data? You bet. So you can do that. So now I have those that would have those extra columns, depending on how much data you go through. Sometimes it takes, 15 minutes to run. You have thousands, it could take, several hours to run. But now I have those columns. And now remember, we're not successful on the Power Automate side, where I said, hey, when there's a change to the list, this is also a list. I can say, hey, if there's a change to this document library, and now I see that there was a change to an item, so this is an item, I want to read one of these three columns. And if that column has that data, where like, let's say there's a expiration date due or whatnot, I may want to say like, oh, these are my sales items. I can, as it goes in there, without somebody go, oh, open up the RFP, open up the document, find these things, then email somebody. The system finds it, collects the data, extracts the data. A Power Automate rule then can listen for that. Either it can actually talk to syntax, by the way, but in this case, you can actually say, oh, that document had a new item or apply to it. Is it this value from this column that was extracted? Yes. Now I get to do something. Notify somebody, update a database, send a meeting invite to the customer, whatever that is. So now these manual things that you were looking at doing, remember, Power Automate can listen, take action. Syntax can understand, extract information from that document, and add those columns. And by the way, if you're in here, you can add columns too. So now I have this column in here on the documents, and this is another place where people sometimes think like, what's happening? Again, you can create automation to extract data out of the document. There's metadata on the document itself, like title, you can pull that out. Or here I could just decide that, you know, I'm gonna make some changes to this particular document, you know, and do, you know, do whatever I want with it. So here I have the status, and I can decide like, yeah, this is under review, and now it's changed. So, you know, many times we fail to remember that, you know, in SharePoint, these things are they're just items. And sometimes it isn't always the best bet. We tend to organize through folders, but if you really start looking at your documents and not think so much about the folder structure of them, you know, it's like, well, what if, you know, we normally would create this, and I'd create a folder for a customer. Well, what if customer was just this item over here? Well, why would you do it this way? Well, because sometimes one of the things is, you know, we create folders for people to organize things instead of, well, now I'm actually gonna have a Power App that allows me to interact with it, and I have Flow that interacts with it. And do I really want to have this thing go through files? Now you can teach Power Automate to understand how to look for particular folders, where you can actually tell, like, I don't care about folders. I just want to get to documents, regardless of its file pointer, because it can just be flat items. Anyway, that's a kind of a deeper topic. But anyway, here on the files, now I can start to have this meta information that I've defined here through status, or meta information that was inside of it from the content, automatically added as content properties that came from Syntax. Right, so Syntax has its own licensing thing. Actually, I'm not going to cover that so much today, but it's you know, it's normally the size of the documents, excuse me, and the quantity of documents that it comes down to pricing, and there is group pricing on it. Anyway, so we can do really good things with structured things. Well, if you want to do tables, you know, things like tables that you're going to have that's a little more complicated. Well, let's say complicated. It's not done in this view. You actually have to do that through the AI builder, which is a little bit different. Anyhow, so now I have documents that I can find, sort, put metadata either directly I put on it, or Syntax helps push those things in for me. I can do a Power Automate against it, look for that data, decide to make decisions, send it to teams, all, you know, all that kind of good stuff that's happening. And then as that's materializing, as more things are starting to happen in our environment, I can actually start to do you know, Power BI to view some of that, you know, some of those items. So actually, let's go back to one of our other views over here, and we're going to go to, oh look, there's one here, inventory list, sales results overview. All right, some sales performance stuff that's in there. That's good. All right, so maybe we want to do something with this this particular one. We're not going to go through the automation list. Let's do more. It is an Excel spreadsheet, but you know, we're going to get through it through a SharePoint folder. It's not ideal, but there's some other shortcuts to do that. So this one here, you have to put in. This is one thing that's tricky. You say, oh, I'll put in the place to the site. All right, so that's where we have you know, the data that we're going to go through. This is the site that it wants. You know, if you ever do anything with Power BI here, and you try and look for the SharePoint folder, you know, you try and give it like the actual folder, it doesn't like it. It just wants the site. URL, yes, I want to connect to that tenant. That's the one you guys are going to get here in a little bit. Oh, come on. Microsoft account, sorry. Sign in. My credentials. Give me a second to do that. Copy. Oh, it opened up a browser somewhere. Here it is. Just pulled up a browser for me to log in. All right, let's connect. All right, lots of stuff. Let's transform this data. This part's kind of the weird one. If you've ever done Power, I've never done it. Maybe this is a nice little primer on it. Again, not the best way, because you get all the documents, no matter what folder they're in. And at this stage, you can say like, wow, that's that's a lot of stuff going on here. If you have like thousands of documents, there's a shortcut in order to get to this a little bit faster, but we're just going to do it this way. So Let's look for the one that has a spreadsheet. There's a summary data here, sales result. That's the one we want. So we're going to go ahead and click on this guy. And if you notice in here, one of the things you're going to start to see is that it's saying source, navigation, import Excel. You know, it's going deeper. So every time you click on it, it goes a little bit further down. So let's go and do sales performance. So this is a table. So we're going to tell it I want that table. Now it's going to load it up. Whiz bang! Look, we got a bunch of things that's in here. Got all our data table in here. Let's go ahead and use the first row as headers. So we're going to get that in there. Some results. This thing's revenue. So let's go ahead and change this type to a fixed decimal number. So it'll make it a little bit of a dollar column. I'll just make it a new step. And now look, now we got a nice little dollar column that's in here. And I'm just going to rename this real quick to sales performance. Good. And remember, I can do anything with it. I'm just going to close it down. Now that it does that, it's going to try and, you know, sort some things out. I can create multiple tables. I would make a duplicate of the query that I'd had, and I'd get it, you know, I'd grab one of the other tables and start to work with it. So now I got through, you know, that kind of information that's in here. Actually, let's go ahead and just put in some of the data in here just so we have something to take a look at. So let's say full name and the revenue. So we can have some information that's here. Cool, coming from the SharePoint list. I love it. Let's publish it. Yes, let's save it. My webinar. You're going to see why this name is important. Lots of cool new ways to save Power BI. Anyhow, so now we have this. We're saving it. It's going to ask me, where do I want to publish it? You know, this is well, this is going because it has me available here online, so that's no fun. So I'm going to put it into this one, which is not in this tenant at all. I'll do that, you know, after the webinar here, so that you guys can see the same thing if you want. And the thing that happens here, I have this little team site called AAA Demo. I put all my things there. Not very unique, but it's always at the top. So let me just sign into that. And now, if this was in that other tenant, which will be shortly after the call, that same data now is inside of SharePoint. Now, the nice thing that when you have something like this, like, great, I pull, you know, on the Power BI, I pulled it down, I published it. It's only going to live like this for as long as you leave it. But you can then edit. You can then edit the you know, the configuration for this. And so when you edit it, you can actually tell it, you know, how long you want that. I'm sorry, how long you want it to, or how often you want to refresh. So maybe that spreadsheet, you know, again, it's a spreadsheet, maybe it's a SharePoint site. You know, you can set it to refresh every hour, once a day, once a week, once a month, so people can still enter in what they want. But then I can add this in this same view inside of the Power Pages, inside of a Power App, inside of SharePoint Online. You can actually see this data when you log in on, if you use the Power BI phone app as well. And again, people can go into this Power BI and go, hey, I really like this kind of thing. I want to subscribe to a report. So I want to create a subscription where I want this page sent to me, sent to my team. Go ahead and attach the full result if, you know, that's available, if we put that on there, and then the dates and the times. And, you know, I want it every week, so we can look at the sales number every week that comes to us. That data could have been exported from some, you know, from Power Automate that went against your HubSpot or Salesforce. Pull down a copy, you know, put it into whatever format or into a database. You have a report on it, sends it to other people. Now we're cooking. So hopefully there, you know, it's kind of rude and crude in terms of some of the things, but maybe gives you ideas of how quickly you can actually start to use the Power Apps, start to do what you need to go there. So, you know, there's a lot of connectors that are there. So there's many connectors that are in there that are really helpful connectors that help you either transform HTML from like an email. So somebody wrote here something really cool where, hey, anytime we get this kind of announcement from Microsoft that has this subject on it, I want to look for this piece of data, put it onto a list, SharePoint list, and then send a Teams message to people that says, hey, you need to go take a look at this, right? Just from email that's coming to them and for other groups of people, automated that process. Where normally it's hey, you have that, you have a rule, I have a custom form, or what happens when that person leaves? Or changes under the responsibility, kind of tied, where you can create a Power Automate. You'd have to create a service account, or you can move the Logic apps, a whole bigger thing. that you can do this. But there's a lot of connectors that are in here. Microsoft keeps adding more that are really good. And then, two more kind of parts of this. Oh, sorry, I'm not in presentation mode. There we go. So two of the parts of this is that, yes, it's a low code. You saw me do a lot of dragging and dropping, clicking things, moving them around. This is what they say the every developer, the low code type of person. And I'll tell you, coding things up really it's helpful when you have somebody who has a data and logical mind of things. Not to say, we're being disparaging of people who aren't. There's a certain logic. Like, what I mean by logic is when I see this, if I see that value, I look for this, I put this here, right? So it's very kind of like a machine, because you're training a machine of what to go do. The nice thing about doing this way is that they don't have to understand the developer language construct, C#, JavaScript, whatever it is they use. But if you do have other people in your business, or like with us or another third party, and they, but that's like childish stuff, right? Too much of this, I want some deeper capabilities. You can still do this using, code first type things, including, the Power Pages. You can drag drop it in the screen, and a developer working together with you, or even a web designer, can actually use the tools they need like VS Code and customize it even more. So you're not really trading off flexibility and configuration for ease of use. You can bring them both together, but the main thing here is you don't have to start with the complexities there to get going. You really can take small steps. Okay, so here's the thing about the licensing. So when you look here, this is specific to Power Automate. It's because they each have their own kind of thing. But the one thing is that there's something called seated licensing, and Microsoft is changing a bunch of this recently. And there's even a new pay-per-use consumption model coming soon for the Power Apps. Right now, it's very license-based. So if I have a flow, or if I have particularly a flow, if I have a flow, an automated flow, the context in which it runs under, how much they're allowed to use it, is tied to that connection. Well, what if I don't want to tie to a user? Then you'd have to create a service account, which we all hate. I talk about not having service accounts, but unfortunately, this is what you have to do. You have to buy a license, create a user, buy a license, apply it here. They can't MFA in, so you got to do some other things special to protect them, and it could run under that context. So not the greatest, but Microsoft is making some changes there. Anyway, but for many of you, you might have the right license already, a Microsoft 365 license or an Office 365 license, which would allow you here for Power Automate to start actually building your own flows or flows for your teams. Same thing for Power Apps. It has some of its own seated amounts, and you should take a look. The virtual assistant is one that really has to have its own license, because it's never a user, it's a machine, so you have to type. There's a trial that you can do in commercial. And sites, kind of the same thing. So, this is a place where customers, feel free to reach out, for doing work together, looking to do it, because understand the licensing, how to do it the best, is something that's important to really understand. But most customers already have a license like this that they can apply to it. Some people have turned off the capability. I get it. But really start to think about where you can do it. Yes, and just like anything else, people can make it go wrong, just like they can delete a whole folder, delete all your content. Their users can do crazy things. But you should start, get started with it. The main thing is that, I think that there's a lot of anxiety, what to do, where to go do it. And if you rechannel that anxiety to excitement and thinking about what can we do, one of the things you'll start to really notice is that when you put people in the middle of your process like you do today, their understanding and brain understands that, oh, when I'm in this spreadsheet, this customer name means this over here. But sometimes there's a discrepancy. It's Agile IT in one sheet. In our CRM, we have Agile IT, comma, Inc. And then in another SharePoint list, we have Agile IT, no comma, Inc. with the period. To computers, they look all different. So sometimes, part of this process is to do data cleansing across all. It's a tough process to go through, because sometimes they're in one, not the other. There's legacy systems, and that's a really hard part of it. Now, you don't have to fix everything to get going, but as you start to collect new data or start to bind other data, like in Power BI, it's one of the main things you're gonna have to go through, but you can do it as you go. Lots of different ways to go through it. But if you have a new initiative, something new that you're starting, you could do it through Power Apps. And again, one of the things, I'm sure many of you have this, just like the scenario I was talking about, we have a spreadsheet with our customer data. We're going to create a SharePoint list, and we normally put company name in there and somebody types it in, right? Well, think now, if you have a Power App that's doing your menu, that text box, instead of it being blank, you can actually call Power Automate that says, hey, can you provide me a list of the customers we have? And you might say, our source of authority, like for us as HubSpot, is HubSpot. Whatever it is wins, and that's what's going to be in the drop-down list. So at least there, I can say, now going forward, we always have that as our name. That's going to be correct. I may still pull the ID behind it, and that's our main storage value. But anyway, the view becomes simple, and then you can start cleaning things up. So now Power Apps updated my menu, making it easier to get our data consistent, using Power Automate to understand the rules and the processing. And then as I build that data up, I can use Power BI to collect it and really start to do it. You know, is it going to slow you down sometimes than just sticking stuff in spreadsheets? Like, of course it's going to slow you down a little bit like that, but it's supposed to slow you down so that you know, we don't have this common data mess that many of us have, and we're just stuck in spreadsheet and Word documents. So hopefully through this, even through some of my bumbling of some of the demos, you at least see where things are, hopefully give you ideas of where you can go next and do with it, and understand that these pieces are going to work together. Maybe expose you a little bit more to things like syntax or some of the things you can do in Power Automate that maybe didn't know what Power Pages was. So hopefully it gave you that kind of quick rundown of thinking, where can we go through this? Your scenario and your business is going to be tied to your kind of, you know, key initiatives, what's important, how we need to go do it. So that's a place where it gets unique. But you know, we're all on the same journey to go together. And let me tell you, there was just a big Power Platform conference that went about a month ago. There's the huge energy around Power Platforms and skill sets and training and knowledge. I mean, that's the place where it's going to be. How do we put it in there first before we decide, I'll just kick up a spreadsheet to go do it? It's good to model in spreadsheets sometimes, just not make it so good where people decide to just use that. Anyhow, so that's why I wanted to go through here. Let's see if we open up to any questions that maybe people have or want to ask. And after these question answer is when we're going to show the good stuff of, we're going to still record through this, but online, we're going to chop that out where I'm going to give you access to the tenant, usernames and passwords, and then you guys are going to go have a great time with it. First off, any questions anybody has, go ahead and let's fill it into to our Q&A box here. So one question is for people that are for people that are end users that are running the flow, do they also have to have a Power Platform license? No, they don't have to have a Power Platform license. Not even guests need to have a Power Platform license or for like Power Automate. Remember, it runs under the context of those that created it, because really everybody can create one, right? Everybody can say, well, I created 8 of them for me because I check emails for one, or anytime there's a Teams message that's from my boss and any of the teams that I have, I want to send a text message or something to me. Could you create that? Absolutely. So everybody can create these little automations to improve their world. We don't have to think like, oh, the Power Automate is always like, you know, the big corporate thing, provisioned by IT, know all those things. Can IT manage it? Of course, you know, all those sorts of things. So it's really, you know, easy to use, but it's really tied towards whoever you configure the flow through and their contacts, you know, that they have there. So be mindful of permissions. And also when you share your Power Automate with somebody else, if you've already defined the context of you, well, once I share that Power Automate with somebody else, because we're working on it together, it still runs under my context unless they switch it, which means they could abuse it and say, hey, I now want to read Conrad's email when it's going through there. So be mindful when you do those certain things as you share, kind of go back and